At 6:30 IMM, the rain was coming down in sheets outside my Seattle apartment, streaking the windows with a kind of quiet menace. Logan, my 2-year-old son, was in his high chair, babbling to himself over oatmeal, blissfully unaware that his father's life was about to disintegrate. I had just poured myself a black coffee when my phone buzzed across the marble counter. A new email. The subject line hit me like a slap. New beginning. Curious, I opened it, and for a moment, the world around me seemed to tilt. Staring back at me was a photograph. Danielle, my wife of 6 years, arms draped around a lean, smug-looking younger man, smiling in front of our mountain cabin. Our cabin, the one I had bought with cash from my first major software sale. The cabin where we had planned to teach Logan to fish, to hike, to dream. Beneath the photo, Danielle's message was brief and cutting. I've moved in with Ryan. Victor's legal team will be sending you the paperwork. Don't fight it. The cabin's mine now. For a heartbeat, I stood there, the hot mug trembling in my hand, a million thoughts crashing into each other. Danielle had always been clever, manipulative, even, but this, stealing the very place that symbolized everything I'd worked for. She wasn't just leaving me, she was trying to erase me. I swallowed hard, setting the coffee down before I dropped it. Logan laughed at something only he could see, utterly untouched by the wreckage happening around him. I forced a smile for him, but inside, the anger began to stir, thick and molten. Danielle thought she had outsmarted me. She thought the deed being in her name was enough. She thought my love for her and my son had made me weak, but what she didn't know was that I'd never built my company by being careless. I'd had my lawyer draft airtight ownership documents the day I signed over the cabin for tax purposes. Everything about that property was traceable back to me. Taking a slow, steadying breath, I tapped Danielle's name on my phone screen and hit block. Then, without hesitation, I composed a short, icy reply. Are you sure about that? You might want to check the fine print. I hit send, turned to Logan, and smiled wider. They had no idea who they had just declared war on. As Logan continued to giggle at his own oatmeal-covered fingers, I leaned back against the counter, letting the fury simmer low and controlled. Memories of Danielle flooded in, sharp and uninvited. 6 years ago, when we first met, she'd been magnetic, a whirlwind of charm, ambition, and beauty. Back then, I was just a scrappy tech entrepreneur trying to get my cybersecurity startup off the ground. She loved to tell everyone she believed in me before anyone else did, but the truth was I already had a solid trajectory. Danielle had merely attached herself to it, smiling for the cameras when I signed my first big contract, posting curated photos of our power couple life online. The signs had been there if I'd been willing to see them. The endless networking events that went suspiciously late, the weekends she suddenly needed time alone to focus on her branding work. I'd been too consumed building a company from scratch while making sure Logan had everything he needed to ask hard questions. She counted on that. Danielle played on my loyalty, my stubborn belief that, and I, fool that I was, let her. Over the past year, her distance had grown more obvious, but every time I raised a concern, she dismissed me with a light laugh or a scathing remark about how paranoid I was becoming. Now, staring at the proof in that one smug photo, it all crystallized. The late nights, the secretive texts, the sudden suggestion to put the cabin deed in her name for accounting simplicity, every lie stitched neatly into a betrayal she had probably been planning for months, maybe longer. But Danielle had made one fatal mistake. She assumed that just because I hadn't fought her before, I wouldn't now. She saw the steady, exhausted father. She didn't see the strategist. She didn't see the man who had built firewalls so complex that Fortune 500 companies paid me millions to protect them. I pushed away from the counter, my jaw tight with purpose. She thought the cabin was the prize. She had no idea she had just declared war on the wrong man. I carried Logan to his playpen, handing him his favorite toy robot, and sat down at my workstation, the familiar hum of my triple monitor setup grounding me. The first thing I did was call Claire Bennett, my lawyer, a woman who understood both corporate law and revenge with surgical precision. I briefed her quickly, my voice clipped and calm. Danielle had made her move. Now it was time for mine. Claire asked me to send over every document tied to the cabin's purchase. As I uploaded the contracts and wire transfer receipts, I smiled grimly. Every dime for that property had come straight from my business profits, traced and documented. Danielle might have her name on the deed, but legally, she didn't own a thing. Once Claire was moving on the legal front, I turned to my second line of defense, the cabin's security system. Danielle didn't know about the hidden cameras I had installed months ago, tiny, unobtrusive devices wired into the property's network. Back then, it had been a precaution against break-ins. Now, it was my ace. I pulled up the live feed. There she was, lounging on the deck in my chair, barefoot, sipping from a glass of wine that I had paid for. Sitting beside her was Victor Langston, her uncle and the CEO of Titan Tech, one of my company's biggest rivals. They laughed together, oblivious to the fact that every word they spoke was being recorded. I toggled back through the stored footage. There were hours of evidence, Danielle giving unauthorized tours of the cabin, Victor discussing asset transfers, and worst of all, open conversations about accessing my company's client databases. It wasn't just adultery anymore. This was conspiracy, corporate espionage, felony-level crimes. I sat back, breathing in slow through my nose. Danielle and Victor thought they were 2 moves ahead. They thought they were operating in the shadows, safe and unseen. But I had spent a lifetime building defenses, not just for networks, but for myself. And now, as they celebrated what they thought was their flawless victory, they had no idea they were handing me the ammunition I needed to destroy them. I glanced over at Logan, who had fallen asleep cuddling his robot, utterly at peace. I turned back to the glowing monitors, my hands steady as I began laying the groundwork for a counterattack they would never see coming. Just as I was cataloging the security footage, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Sophie Kim, my assistant and cybersecurity chief. Her voice was tight when I answered. "Michael, you need to check the joint accounts. Now." I logged into the banking app, already dreading what I'd find. Within seconds, my fears were confirmed. The college fund had been building for Logan 2 years of careful saving, nearly $250,000, 0 cents, was gone. The balance read a brutal empty zero. There were more transfers, small amounts, siphoned systematically over the past 6 months. Not enough to trigger automatic alerts, just enough to be lethal over time. Danielle hadn't just been planning a new life for herself, she had been bleeding me dry to fund it. I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead, breathing deep. This wasn't desperation. This was premeditation. She'd stolen from her own son without hesitation. I thought back to every excuse, the unexpected expenses she had explained away, the vague references to investments she was managing with Victor's help. Lies, every single one. "I traced the offshore account," Sophie said, her voice grim. "It's linked to one of Titan Tech's shell companies. Victor must have helped her set it up." Of course he did. Victor wasn't just orchestrating a personal betrayal. He was systematically dismantling my financial security to weaken my position ahead of Titan Tech's upcoming merger. With me vulnerable, my company would be exposed. My tech innovations, the very ones Titan Tech had been trying and failing to replicate, would be easy prey. I thanked Sophie and hung up, my mind already working 2 moves ahead. Logan stirred in his sleep across the room, murmuring softly. That tiny sound brought everything into brutal focus. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. This was about war. Danielle and Victor weren't just trying to take my house or my money. They were trying to rip away my son's future, destroy everything I had built, and feed it to a company built on exploitation and greed. I turned back to my laptop, eyes hard, and started typing furiously. They wanted a fight? I was going to give them a war they couldn't survive. By mid-morning, the rain outside had turned to a mist, but inside my apartment, the storm was just gathering strength. I set up a secure channel with Sophie, and together we began pulling every string, digging deeper into the web Danielle and Victor had spun. It didn't take long before we struck gold. Sophie hacked into Danielle's private social media accounts and found a treasure trove of damning material. For months, Danielle had been bragging to a private circle of friends about her strategic upgrade posts, filled with cruel jokes about me being too distracted with work and too dull to notice she was preparing to leave with half my assets. Screenshots showed her posing in my cabin, wearing my clothes, captioned with mockery, "When you steal both his hoodie and his future." But worse were the private messages between her and Victor. "We'll drain him dry," Victor wrote. "By the time the audit hits, he'll be too broke to fight." Danielle responded with a string of laughing emojis and a photo of Logan's college fund spreadsheet mocking the savings I had carefully built for our son. My hands clenched so hard around the edge of the desk that my knuckles whitened. It wasn't just personal betrayal anymore. It was calculated malice. They weren't satisfied with taking my marriage or my money. They wanted my company, my legacy, and they had been laughing about it the entire time. Looking deeper, Sophie uncovered emails between Victor and the Titan Tech legal team, outlining a coordinated plan, using the manufactured financial crisis of my divorce to demand an emergency audit of my business. Under the guise of due diligence, they intended to freeze my accounts, paralyze operations, and quietly siphon proprietary tech to Titan Tech before the merger went public. It wasn't just an attack on me. It was a hostile business assault disguised as a personal collapse. I sat back, letting it all sink in. Danielle thought this was about hurt feelings. Victor thought this was about market domination. Neither understood what they were truly playing with. I hadn't built a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity empire by trusting blindly. I had contingencies for contingencies. I just hadn't thought I would ever need to use them against the people closest to me. Well, that was about to change. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to dismantle them, piece by calculated piece. The next move had to be perfect. I couldn't rush it, not when everything hung on catching them in the act. After reviewing the evidence with Claire, we decided to bait the trap wide open. Using my company's cybersecurity team, we set up a false portal, a mock version of our internal database, rigged to alert us the second unauthorized access was attempted. If Victor and Danielle were desperate, and judging by their smug arrogance, they'd take the bait without hesitation. Meanwhile, Claire prepared the formal evidence package, proof of the siphoned college fund, the fraudulent property claims, the social media confessions, and the corporate conspiracy. It was a portfolio so damning it would not only nuke Danielle's divorce claims, but also crater Victor's position at Titan Tech. Still, Claire wanted one last piece to make it airtight, real-time proof of attempted corporate espionage. Timing was everything. We had to lure them into striking just as we dropped the bomb on Titan Tech's board of directors. While Logan napped peacefully upstairs, I monitored the security feeds from the mountain cabin. Danielle and Victor had returned. Through the hidden cameras, I watched them stroll through my No, our property, like they already owned it. Victor's self-satisfied grin twisted my stomach. Danielle draped herself across the couch, flipping through my old photo albums like trophies of a conquest. Audio streamed through, crystal clear. "This'll all be over by next week," Victor said, swirling a glass of scotch. "Once the audit locks down his accounts, he'll be begging for a settlement." Danielle laughed, tossing a framed picture of Logan and me onto the floor without a second glance. "And we'll be sipping champagne with Titan Tech's board when the merger closes. He won't even see it coming." I leaned closer to the screen, jaw tightening. "No," I thought grimly, "you won't see it coming." Rachel, one of my lead IT specialists, pinged me an update. "They're trying to breach the fake server," she said, "right now, logging every move." Everything was in place. Claire was ready with the board emails. The evidence was airtight. And the moment they crossed the final line, they'd not only lose their freedom, they'd lose their power, their reputations, everything they thought they had stolen. I closed my laptop softly and smiled to myself. Tomorrow, their world would burn, and I would be holding the match. At precisely 9:00 a.m. the next morning, Claire hit send on the evidence packet to Titan Tech's board of directors, federal authorities, and a carefully curated list of investigative journalists. We didn't just show them screenshots or accusations. We delivered time-stamped videos, signed contracts, financial records, and live server logs capturing Victor and Danielle in the act of attempting corporate espionage. Within 5 minutes, chaos erupted. Through the cabin's hidden cameras, I watched it all unfold like a slow-motion train wreck. Victor's phone started buzzing furiously as he lounged at the cabin's kitchen island. His smug expression faltered when he saw the first alert. He clicked through rapidly, eyes widening with each message. "What the hell is this?" he barked at Danielle, shoving the screen toward her. Danielle squinted, reading the subject line. "URGENT corporate espionage allegations. Immediate board meeting called." Victor cursed and tried dialing his lawyer, but it was already too late. Titan Tech's board had moved faster than either of them expected. According to Claire's contacts, several directors had already demanded Victor's immediate suspension pending investigation. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. While Victor panicked, Danielle's phone lit up next. Social media notifications, dozens by the second. Sophie had anonymously leaked screenshots of Danielle's mocking posts and private messages to several board members and business journalists. In minutes, her so-called friends had begun abandoning her publicly, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. Watching Danielle's perfectly curated influencer persona unravel in real time was a grim sort of justice. But the final blow came when a parade of black SUVs pulled up the gravel driveway. Law enforcement officers in dark jackets climbed out, flashing badges. Danielle shrieked as they pounded on the front door. Victor froze like a cornered animal. "You said this was safe," Danielle screamed at him. "You idiot," Victor hissed. "You said he wouldn't fight." Neither had realized I was never playing defense. I had been setting the stage for their public collapse all along. Through the cabin's audio feed, I heard the officers reading Victor his rights. Charges: corporate espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Danielle's sobs turned hysterical when they cuffed her to accessory to felony conspiracy. Watching them being led out in handcuffs, soaking wet in the misting rain, was more satisfying than any angry confrontation ever could have been. Back in my apartment, Logan toddled into the living room, holding his stuffed robot, smiling up at me with wide, trusting eyes. I bent down and scooped him into my arms, breathing in the clean, sweet scent of him. "See that, buddy?" I whispered against his hair. "That's what happens when people think they can take what's ours." The storm outside had cleared. Inside, it was over. And this time, I was the one still standing. The fallout came fast and brutal. Within 24 hours, Victor Langston was ousted from Titan Tech, his reputation shattered beyond repair. The board moved swiftly, distancing the company from the scandal and canceling the merger Victor had pinned his future on. Investigators froze the offshore accounts Danielle and Victor had set up, and thanks to Claire's relentless work, every stolen dollar, including Logan's college fund, was traced and returned with interest. Danielle tried, weakly, to reach out to me through her lawyer, offering apologies wrapped in excuses. She was manipulated. She was misguided. She still cared about Logan's well-being. I didn't bother responding. Some doors, once closed, stay locked forever. The divorce proceedings were swift and merciless. With the mountain of evidence we had gathered, Danielle's claims to any property or financial support were thrown out without a second glance. Full custody of Logan was awarded to me, no contest. The mountain cabin, once the symbol of betrayal, was officially restored to my name, standing proud and untouchable, just like the life I had rebuilt. Meanwhile, my company soared. Investors, impressed by my resilience and integrity during the scandal, poured in fresh capital. Clients who had been on the fence about signing with us moved forward without hesitation, eager to align with a firm that had proven its strength against corruption. Where Titan Tech faltered, we thrived, expanding into markets they had once dominated, dismantling their legacy piece by piece. On weekends, Logan and I would escape to the mountain cabin. He loved the big open spaces, chasing squirrels through the woods, splashing in the creek. Sometimes, as I watched him from the deck with a mug of coffee in hand, I thought about the twisted ambition that had almost destroyed us. But mostly, I thought about how wrong Danielle and Victor had been. They thought they could break me. They thought I was an easy mark. Framed in my office now, above my desk, hangs a printout of Danielle's original email, "New Beginnings." Every time I look at it, I smile. They weren't wrong about one thing. It really was the start of something new, something stronger, something mine. At its heart, The Price of Underestimation teaches a powerful lesson. Never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who builds their future with their own hands. Betrayal, greed, and arrogance might offer short-term victories for those who play dirty, but in the end, integrity, resilience, and strategic thinking always win. Michael's story reminds us that real power doesn't come from deception. It comes from preparation, patience, and knowing when to strike back smartly, not emotion. It's easy to be blindsided by betrayal, but it's what you do next that defines your future. Protect what you build, trust carefully, and never ever let someone else's schemes tear down your dreams. If you enjoyed this story of cunning revenge, high-stakes betrayal, and ultimate triumph, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps bring more intense, empowering stories to life, where justice isn't just an idea. Stay tuned for more tales where the underestimated rise, the traitors fall, and the battle for what truly matters is fought and won. Like the story? Smash that like button, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who loves a good underdog victory.